Peace. Welcome back to the blog. Today I have a guest, Jake Pereira, coming all the way from Reno, Nevada. How you doing, Jake?
Good. I'm fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm doing really good.
Good.
This is the first time I've ever done this type of podcast and interview here on my channel, so I'm super stoked that you're my first guinea pig.
Yeah, I'm excited to be it.
Yeah, man.
Looking forward to this.
Well, so Jake and I connected out in Reno, what was it, about 2 months ago, a month or two ago.
Yeah, about that. Crazy
And
to think it's been that long ago.
I know, right? We had such an amazing conversation that it led to the idea of sharing it with you guys. And I can tell you right now, Jake has an incredible story. So I just want to kind of turn it over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're up to now, and then we'll get into your backstory after that.
Totally. Yeah. So again, my name is Jake Pereira, and how I'm spending most of my time currently is through coaching and content that's all around helping people really step into who they are, or sometimes call it their most authentic self. Because what I've found through my own life and the people that I work with is there's nothing that makes a greater improvement in a person's life than simply spending time as who they are. So I'm really, really motivated and driven by that to help as many people as I can in whatever medium best fits, but really helping people spend more time. So usually it shows up through one-on-one coaching or some of the content that I put out on my social channels or working in groups. But again, that mission is all about helping people get back to that and back to self.
That's amazing. And what do you think, from your experience working with people, what are some of the biggest blocks that we have to just being ourselves? Because it seems so easy, but yet it is difficult.
Right. Yeah. And again, as you say that out loud, just, be yourself seems like a really simple idea. But what I've found both in my own life and with the people that I work with is the further we progress in life, we build these walls around our true self, or we build these walls around who we really are. And those walls can show up in things like fear or doubt, or I'm not enough, or this isn't how things are supposed to be. I should be here. I should be there. And slowly, like each one of these stories we tell ourselves is like a brick that builds that wall higher and higher and higher. And what I've found is like the higher that wall gets and the more you build it up, the more difficult that it can actually be to step out into, being yourself more often. So what I find, and usually when I start working with people, is at this moment of dissatisfaction where, their internal world is so out of harmony with what's going on in their outside world that they need to make a shift. So we tend to make, little tweaks here and there that end up helping to start break down that wall.
For sure. That's amazing, man. And so you work one-on-one with people and you kind of consult people and coach them through that experience?
Yeah, exactly. One-on-one consulting and coaching. If they're here in Reno, sometimes we'll get on the outdoors and mountain bike and hike and really approach it through that environment. But if they're not, phone call, Skype like this, tends to work really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how long have you been doing this? What kind of got you into, well, let's take what got you into this after, but how long have you been doing this?
Yeah, so I've been doing it for about a year, a little over a year, and then as my full time for probably the last 8 months or so. So really committing to, mastering the practice and helping as many people as I possibly can.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm super excited to jump into your backstory. So
yeah,
take us back to wherever you want to begin, and let's just explain to people kind of your journey and what you've been through that has now manifested in you completely changing your career path and taking a new trajectory to help people.
Definitely. So I think oftentimes external circumstances can be an invitation to get to know who you really are. And so, I think this journey really started for me initially when I was about 7 years old. And I had this heart disease called ventricular tachycardia. And what would happen is my heart beat so fast that I'd pass out, and I'd have to initially have to go to the hospital. Eventually there was some treatments that I could do to kind of bring it down, but that led to getting heart surgery at 7 years old.
Wow.
And the way that my parents did it, and it was, good thing that they did it this way. It was kind of a surprise. They took me to Seattle and they told me that we were going for a Yankees game, baseball game, which is my favorite baseball team. And we did go to that game, but the next day as we were driving home, they said we had to make one more stop. And that one more stop turned out to be the hospital, where I was instantly going in for that heart surgery to
Whoa.
correct my disease. And at
Just
7 years
straight
old,
away, no like interview or
yeah,
anything. It was just like, hey, you have
no,
heart surgery now.
yeah, yep, exactly. So,
Whoa.
and I remember, 7-year-old brain's a little bit less analytical and processing, but I remember having this panic internally that, everything could go wrong, because heart surgery can be a scary thing.
For sure.
But, my parents calmed me down, and they just said, start to take some deep breaths and start to center your mind. They said it in probably a little bit different way to a 7-year-old, but it was kind of the first realization that I could cultivate some calm through how I was using my mind or how I was using my breath.
Wow.
And so it went from a panic state to really calm state, and the surgery went great, and I've been fine ever since. So
That's
it was a
amazing.
beautiful, beautiful blessing. Fast forward 7 more years, and I had another chance to get to know self, if you will. So I think a lot of my experiences have been through overcoming some medical adversities.
Hmm.
And this one was really the biggest inflection point in my life. And that's when I was 14. I was snowboarding up in Idaho, came off a really big jump, and I overshot the landing and landed in the flats. And the doctor said it was about a 50-foot fall
Man.
to the point of impact. Yeah. And so, I don't really remember any of the actual event because of the brain trauma, but I guess I rotated slightly backwards, and my head was kind of the first thing to hit, and then my heel slammed into the snow, and that ended up, breaking my femur clean, shattering my
Oof.
pelvis, fractures in the neck and back, severe concussion, nerve damage. I mean, it was quite the impact,
No
and
kidding.
yeah.
Wow.
So
And so then what
yeah.
next? Obviously you black out, you kind of go into a coma, I would imagine.
Uh-huh.
And how long were you in a coma?
Yeah, so I was lucky. I missed the coma state, but I went completely dark, and I don't really remember anything clearly until actually waking up in a hospital in Seattle. They ended up getting me down the mountain, realized that my injuries were too severe for the local mountain town, and I was lucky. I had a father who said, get him to the best medical care, and that happened to be in Seattle. So got my first private jet ride, which I don't remember.
Oh man, come on.
Yeah, right. I know. But yeah, they flew me over to Seattle, where I had quite a bit of medical work done at a hospital there, and ended up saving my life.
Wow.
So yeah.
And so then what was your journey from that point to getting out of the hospital?
Yeah, and those couple weeks were, dark moments of the soul, but a lot of good stuff retrospectively came out of it. My first memory waking up in the hospital is I'm getting admitted in the emergency type room, and I come to consciousness, and I look to my right, and I see this guy. He's got bullet wounds in his chest, and he's handcuffed to the bed, and he's trying to get out. And so I'm super confused. And then I
Mm-hmm.
turn to my left, and I see my parents, and I just say, what happened? The combination of that, doing a body scan, and feeling how I was feeling, and waking up in kind of this foreign place.
Wow.
And they told me that I'd been in a snowboarding accident, and that I was going to be there for a little while.
So this
So
this person that you saw, I'm kind of interested in that point. So this was, what's your interpretation of that?
yeah, it was such a reality shaking moment. Like, I really just had no idea what happened. And coming into consciousness like that, and like, this is your new awareness now, was kind of where my brain went, like trying to make sense of this new reality that was my life. And there was questioning, and there was denial, and there was a lot of fear, being in that much pain and having no idea what happened, what my injuries were, what that would look like moving forward. It really put myself into, what I call my personal ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, no kidding. And so what'd the doctors say as far as you walking again?
yeah, there was a lot of question around, would I walk again, and if I walked again, would I have a limp, and would I be able to run again, or how long would it take, and kind of the big question that or the big answer to that question would be when they were able to get in and do some of the surgeries. So they really weren't sure what would happen until they got in there and started putting me back together again.
No kidding. Talk about a puzzle piece.
Oh my
Like
God, man.
getting you
Yeah.
back together.
Yeah.
Jeez. What
A lot of very
amazing.
talented doctors. Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah, what an
Yeah.
amazing thing. So
Yeah.
then how did this shift your perspective? What was some of your takeaways that ended up changing your trajectory from here forward?
Yeah, and again, as a single event, this event probably had a greater impact on my personal trajectory than anything I've ever experienced because, first and foremost, I'm in the hospital. I have a tremendous amount of pain. I mean, it's 24/7, whether it's, them drilling the traction through my kneecap and getting that cast on to keep my femur from, going up into my body, or the constant tests, or the poking and prodding, or the surgery itself. There's just this constant pain. And what I found was eventually, like, the pain meds, they weren't doing it. The treatment, it wasn't doing it. It wasn't, yes, it was numbing the pain, but there was so much internal turmoil that it wasn't helping with. And in fact,
Hmm.
some ways it was making it worse. They gave me a morphine button and it was a drip, and I kept pressing it and pressing it and pressing it, and ended up overdosing and had these vivid hallucinations of my biggest fears. And so just stuff like that kept happening and happening. And I just, at some point, and I don't know what it was, in my higher self, the divine, really what it was, but it was just this, like, look inside, turn it around, quit searching out here in the external, like, look deep within. That's find your peace and your calm. And so in that, started to, what I now know is meditate and look inside and try to, get in touch with that inner self. And the more I did that, the more I found out I was able to cultivate that internal calm, and
Sure.
then managing the pain and managing this chaotic medical environment around me, it became much more manageable. And
Yeah.
so that really instilled the power of the mind, and the power of the mind-body connection, and how my body was responding to the way that my mind was calling on it to do so. I mean, even what seemed like miraculous things. I mean, I had this fear of needles and shots, and I was getting them, a couple times a day. And I got to the point where I could calm the mind and not even feel like I felt the pain anymore. So
Hmm.
it was just this powerful after the mind-body connection, and that has shaped my perspective on life from here on out.
That's incredible. It kind of reminds me of the whole Wim Hof
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah,
where for those people out there that aren't super familiar, definitely look up Wim Hof. And he's this guy that basically can do these incredible things like climbing Mount Everest in shorts,
yeah.
all from just learning how to breathe and kind of change your mind state and elevate your consciousness to realize that you have much more control over these experiences than normally we think we do. And I think that's
Absolutely.
an incredible point that you just highlighted of going inward versus going outward. And when
Mhm.
you discover the inner landscape, there's a lot more that you can actually interact with
Uh-huh.
to change the effects of the reality around you and also interact with reality itself. And
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
instead of trying to force the external to be something, you go in, and then next thing you know, the external just starts to magically shift.
Yeah, it's just crazy how it works, and it can be shocking at first when you
Oh,
start to
yeah,
play the inner game and look at the inner game, and how your external world will completely shift and alter around that, what you put out. And
totally.
that event's acted as a good anchor for me, because it's really easy to get caught in that external seeking, but to remember how powerful it is to just check in with self and see what's going on the inner game.
Absolutely. And so let's fast forward a little bit. So
Yeah.
you go through this experience, it's
Mm-hmm.
been super traumatic, and you've had this life shift.
Mm-hmm.
Then you said you were still 14?
Yep, 14 years
So
old.
you're
Yeah.
14, and so you go through high school, you got a
Yep.
job at Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let me know if that's jumping too far in the future, but that's like the next point of your story I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, it's certainly part of it, and a big part of it. And I think what happened, the kind of the next big learning from the experience that led to that big milestone in my life, was coming back and having the reality of recovery. There was this kind of illusion, I guess, in the hospital, because was knew that when I got back home, everything was going to be sunshine and rainbows again. But showed up back to my house, and there's a wheelchair ramp going up to my front door, and my bed's replaced with a hospital bed. And it was like, all right, this is real. This isn't going
Wow.
away. And so that realization, kind of came to this fork in the road. And I think we face these time in our lives of, it doesn't have to be a big medical trauma, but in any circumstance where, you can either take it the way of letting it beat you and being destructive, or you can make it a really empowering thing. And so, really grateful that I made the choice to make it an empowering thing, and entrusting the internal world to organize my external world. There's these things that happened, right? I made the decision that I wanted to walk again, and not only walk again, but run again and play sports again. And that was my intention and my North Star. And I was pointing my entire life to that. And then it became, how did I organize my life around that outcome and that intention? Who did I need to spend my time around? What did I need to spend my time doing? What were the habits I needed to have day in and day out, and the practices to keep touching into self? And, eventually that yielded the results of, being able to walk and run again and play sports again at a high level, and having a realization that it doesn't apply to medical, but it could apply to anything in your life. So I
What
started
is
applying.
that? What is that moment like though, where your body is completely broken?
Yeah.
You obviously can't walk, you can't run,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you set this intention.
Yeah.
What does that even mean for people that are kind of unfamiliar with that type of a, conflict in reality?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful question. And, for me, it was a dark night of the soul, and I'm laying in the hospital bed, and, I'm overcome with pain. And I think we've all had those moments in our life where it's our own personal ground zero, and nothing seems like it's looking up. There's really no hope, and you're really not sure where to start. And I think the most powerful thing about that scenario, and what you can do if you feel like you're really at rock bottom with no path forward, is just letting go. Like, I had to surrender to a higher good, and I had to surrender to the fact that this intention may not seem realistic right now as I lay here in a neck brace in a hospital bed, this idea of walking. But I have to trust, that, again, going into this internal world and visualizing and trusting in the process, that if I do the right things day in and day out in the internal game, that eventually I'll get out of that wheelchair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think when we were talking back in Reno, you inspired in me the subject of this author named Neville Goddard.
Mm.
And I have a few other videos on my channel where I've kind of broken down some quotes from him and recommended a few books. But his whole thing is that you have to realize that your imagination is the creative force of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's the blueprint from which our reality takes its shape.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's culture, we see imagination as this kind of fantasy made up place that's not real. You can't actually touch it, you can't taste it. But
Yeah.
when you have these type of experiences, then you start to realize that they are much more connected than you thought in the beginning. So Neville kind of talks about creating these imaginal scenarios where you use your imagination to create a scenario that your rational mind here in the real world would say is not real or impossible.
Yeah.
But through meditation, you go into this imagination space where you see yourself doing the thing that you would like to have as a goal. But instead of, the way that he says, and I love the way he words this, is instead of thinking of your desire, you have to think from your desire.
Yeah.
So in your example, you're sitting there with a broken body. Your rational mind says, I can't walk, I can't run. If you listen to all the advice of the doctors, it's going to say things like, it's going to be impossible, or I'll never be the same.
Yeah.
But what I love about your story is you use your imagination to create these scenarios where you see yourself walking and you see yourself running. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, your body is just laying on a bed.
Yeah.
But it creates this magnetic effect where your body starts to heal itself, and that goal comes closer and closer to you. And then next thing you know, one day you're out there walking and running
Yeah,
and
yeah.
doing your thing, and you seem healthier than ever now.
Yeah, healthier than ever, and I've still got all the titanium with no problems. And doctors said that wouldn't be the case. And but
Wow.
yeah, that's such a powerful idea, and one of the things I was so excited to hear from you too, and your story, because I think we have these moments where we want to create a new reality for ourselves, but everybody around us is saying it's impossible, and don't do it, and you're crazy for giving this up, or you're crazy for doing that. And so there really is this internal trust component that is so big. You have to trust that what this part of you inside that's screaming that I need to do this, or this could be possible. Don't let that get drowned out by the voices of the external world, because it can be detrimental to that whole process.
Absolutely. Yeah, because your rational mind will just shout over and over
Hmm.
what it thinks is real, which is what you're seeing and presently experiencing in your reality.
Yeah.
But yeah, the power of the mind is it's such an amazing secret, and yet it's self-evident. But I think it's
Hmm.
a secret because we don't openly talk about this.
Right.
But yet, I think there's plenty of evidence to show that if you have a stressed out mind, you create a
Hmm.
stressed out reality.
Yeah.
And I know in my past and for other people I've known, that's kind of a touchy subject, actually, when you start telling somebody, like, look, you're creating this negative reality.
Hmm.
But the beautiful kind of North Star in that conversation is that if you could create this reality, then
Hmm.
you could create this reality.
Yeah.
So you got to erase the victimhood mentality at that point,
Yeah.
and just start to accept. I accept that I've created the situation I'm in. I've
Hmm.
attracted this to me, and that the universe works perfectly.
Yep.
So the universe has perfectly supplied me with this experience to realize that I've created it.
Yeah.
And then from there,
Absolutely.
it's like a launching point where you can start to clear that karma and recreate your path. And you
Hmm.
start aiming towards a better future
Yeah.
using your mind in these appropriate and empowering ways. And
Yes.
then next thing you know, you're creating this wonderful reality, and
Hmm.
you've finally been let in on the secrets of the universe, that
Hmm.
you're in collaboration with the universe. It's not
Yep.
just it's all happening to me.
Right. Yeah, totally. That's amazing. And the idea that you are the creator of your own experience, it just, and again, it can be really challenging. Like you said, even if you're in a situation and everything in your external world just doesn't seem to be clicking, and it's, terrible and horrible by all your imaginations. And the idea of taking personal responsibility for things that, supposedly happen to you can be such a hard thing to do. But if you can just let go of the victim mentality you were talking about, that is such a crucial element to this whole, creating your external world through the internal game. And I think one that's not talked about enough is, dropping that victim mentality and dropping that victim mindset. Because if, as long as you stay in that place, you're never going to get to take the next steps forward.
For
So
sure.
amazing you brought that up.
Yeah, I've seen that as one of the most crucial mechanisms to becoming a manifester and to
Hmm.
being a conscious co-creator, is that
Yes.
if you're in the energy of victimhood, then you are blocking yourself from actually being an empowered individual.
Hmm.
And our egos and our minds, they kind of tell us that being a victim makes me powerful, you know?
Right.
If I identify with my victimhood, I get sympathy from friends and family and,
Hmm.
all of this poor me type stuff. But
Yeah.
you will never be able to take that next step and actually
Hmm.
create something out of that. So I do find that you have to drop the story.
Yeah.
That's where the element of forgiveness really comes in. You
Hmm.
have to forgive the external people and events that may have harmed you, and you have to forgive your inner self
Right.
for being in that place of victimhood for so long. And
Totally.
then this wonderful, it's like you set yourself up for a miracle at that point, where
Yes.
next thing you know, these things just start happening that are perfectly in alignment with your higher desires and what you
Yeah.
really want for your life.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I would love to kind of throw it back to your helping people. And
Yeah.
how does how does everything we're talking about right now come out between you and your clients and you and your talks?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the first things that I always try to work with people on is, and I'm so happy we came to it so naturally, but this idea of personal responsibility, right? And like taking a look at your life and looking at all the areas that, maybe your less than higher self, your ego, your rational mind has created these external circumstances that are causing dissonance in your mind. And so typically the kind of the evolution of how I end up working with people is, they have, whether it's a single circumstance or the accumulation of circumstances that has led them to a point where they're really dissatisfied with their external world and they start seeking. And I've been there before. When you're out of harmony with your external world, you're looking for something that can help you get back. And as coaching and life consulting kind of comes more to the forefront of popular culture, it's more on people's minds. So, if they're aware of the work that I'm doing, they'll come to me and say, I've got this situation, or sometimes it's not even a situation. Sometimes it's just this overarching feeling of something's not right. And they're looking for a path forward in a different way, and then they're also looking how to take that path. So in the beginning, it's really about understanding what that circumstance is, what that feeling is, like a deep understanding, being a student first of their experience rather than just trying to like teach and consult and like, here's this framework and that framework. And like, no, you got to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And then starting to show them, look, you're in control of your mind. You're in control of your thoughts. Every thought is an opportunity to go this way or this
Yeah.
way. And starting to trace back those thought patterns, usually one of the first things that we'll work on.
Wow, that's amazing. And that kind of reminds me of the Microsoft point that I mentioned earlier, because you got a job at Microsoft.
Uh-huh.
And then why don't you tell me a little bit about that part of your story and how
Yeah.
you ended up shifting out of that?
Yeah, totally. It was really interesting. It was kind of a reflection of some of the internal game that we were talking about. I came down to college here in Nevada and I didn't know anybody, and it turned out to be this really beautiful experience. And just by trusting that it would lead to the right thing for my highest good, the opportunity to go spend some time with Microsoft popped up. And again, it was one of those weird things. I wasn't planning to go work for Microsoft. I didn't even know that Microsoft was here in Reno, and they've got one of their biggest operations center in the
I
world
didn't know
right here
that.
in town.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I didn't either. And a lot of people even in Reno don't. And the only reason I bring that up is just to say, you know, sometimes we get so attached to the how something's going to happen that we don't allow it to happen. So as I was putting out, what this next step for me and my perfect highest good was, this opportunity to go work at Microsoft popped up. So
Awesome.
the the way that worked is I did an internship with them. It was a summer internship, and then I actually had an opportunity to go travel for 5 months around the world, and then came back to start as a full-time employee, where I spent about 3.5, 4 years in the operations business. And so a couple parts of that, my travel experience was, I thought I was going to see the world, but I was really going to see the different parts of myself.
Ah, yeah.
I,
The old
yeah, I went
hero's
and
journey.
the old hero's journey. I went and spent some time in a monastery in Thailand with the Buddhist monks, and I saw all the things, but really it was again just an opportunity to get to know myself.
Wow.
And so I then started back at Microsoft, and Microsoft was an interesting time for me because it was a really good opportunity. It checked a lot of boxes for a lot of people. There good learnings, great place to start off my career. But the more time I spent there, the more time I felt I was kind of diverting from my purpose and what I was put on this planet to do, and sharing my learnings. And again, I take 100% responsibility for that, but I just kind of got lulled into the day to day. And then you wake up 3.5 years later, and it's like, how did I get to this spot?
Yeah.
And the how was the daily thoughts and the daily actions and the daily activities. But, I kind of got to the point where my external world was so out of harmony with my internal world that I had to make a change.
Wow. Yeah. And so, how did you make that change?
Yeah, a lot of self-reflection, asking myself the question of what do I really want for my life. When I was 14 and I had that snowboarding accident, I made this promise that I would always spend my life in my most meaningful way, because I really saw it as a second chance, and I didn't want to waste that. And life is such a precious thing. And so when I started to feel like I wasn't honoring that decision and that promise to myself in both how I was showing up at Microsoft and how I was showing up just in my life in general, that was enough leverage for me to make the change. So, I ended up working with the leadership at Microsoft and getting a last day and, kind of jumping into the unknown.
That's amazing. I'm curious,
Yeah.
what year was this?
So this was 2018, middle of 2018.
Okay, so
Yeah.
recently for
Yeah.
you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it
Wow.
was about a year and 2 months ago that I officially, quit my job and
Wow.
jumped into the wild world of entrepreneurship and coaching and
Yeah.
helping people.
There must have been a wall of fear that you had to get past, though.
Tremendous, fear, self-doubt, like who am I to do this, the external stuff, having, friends and even some family saying, you've got it so good. Why are you, blowing this all up to set off on a new path?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this comes up a lot when you have something deep inside that you want to pursue and you start to take steps to pursue
Oh,
it.
yeah.
The external world, your ego, the rational mind jumps in and says, well, have you thought about this? Or
Yeah.
what about this? Or what about this? And so that only added to it. And I had to get really disciplined on my meditation and my reflection
Yeah.
and my journaling. And
Well, I think
yeah,
there's this element of trust, you know,
yes.
trust in God, trust in the universe, trust that
Hmm.
your higher guidance is going to take you to where you see on the inside.
Yeah.
You know that you can
Huh?
get there, but yet you have all of these apparent obstacles between where you are and where you want to be.
Absolutely.
I connect with that very much, and I think maybe I shared this with you in Reno, but when I was touring with Rihanna, I was in my young
Mm-hmm.
20s. I was so blessed and privileged to be able to be out there and to tour the
Mm-hmm.
world and perform in over 35 countries in the 4 years I was with her. And but the next thing you know, my inner experience was very much in conflict with what my external experience was. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually, I had to make the decision that I wanted to quit working with her, and I wanted to pursue my own art again and become a better
Yeah.
producer and a better writer. And I was young at the time, so it's like, look, I've had this amazing couple years experience, but at that present time, I'm 25. So it's like I still got, the rest of my 20s to make this new lane. But yeah, I had
Sure.
all of my friends and my family's always been very supportive, but a lot of my friends were like, dude, what are you doing, man? You're with
Right,
the
right.
number one pop artist in the world and you want to quit working with her? And I was
Yeah.
like, call me crazy. I don't care what you call me, but it's not right for my heart. And I can tell that if I
Yeah.
stay here, there's going to be this inner peace in me that will become atrophied. And I don't want that. To me,
Right.
it's I've never pursued success and money just for the sake of fame or being rich, things like that. I've always
Mm-hmm.
pursued kind of what we started talking about at the beginning, being my best self, doing what is natural to me and what I'm gifted to do. And I obviously
Sure.
want to do that the highest level possible. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes with this responsibility to continuously check in because
Mm-hmm.
what's in alignment with me today might not be the same in a year or five from now. But there's this innate fear that you have to overcome in order to step outside of your comfort zone. And
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
intense.
And I was just say, that's one of the things that inspired me so much when you and I connected in Reno. It was because that story, right, of having something deep in your heart and soul that you want to do and you have to share with the world. And, it doesn't matter what it is or what the barriers are, there are barriers and obstacles to overcome. But then to meet you as somebody who walked away from, the number one pop artist in the world to pursue their
Yeah.
dream. I mean, that amazed me. And it was such an inspiration because we tell ourselves these little stories and they're not that big of a risk like you took. So the fact that you were able to trust your heart and your soul and your higher good and that yearning inside of you for something different was right. And then to go out and make it a reality, I have to say, man, like amazing, amazing.
It's been an interesting journey, man, and I'm grateful for that experience. It completely changed me and shaped me and made me a better musician than I could have ever been without that. But I also was very much aware that there came a point on that tour where it just wasn't in alignment with me anymore. And then I started projecting myself into the future and seeing myself as a 40-year-old doing the same gig. And I was like, that's not the future I want, you know? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I had to take these bold steps. But that's always kind of been this innate part of my personality too, is trust in spirit over everything else. Because spirit, all of this entire world it's a very persistent illusion, and one day we're going to wake up from this dream
Yeah.
and remember our real spirit identity.
Mhm.
And I think the trick and the hero's journey that we're all on is to remember that you're this spirit while you're here, and to interact with this world from that perspective and realize that, when I use the word illusion, I use it in the Eastern philosophical sense of how this world is ultimately an illusion, but that's not to say that it's fake. That's not to say that you should take it with a grain of salt, because your experience of this illusion is 100% real.
Mhm.
But to remember that it's an illusion, it kind of it helped me in that way of getting out of my victim mentality and realizing, this whole world is a play, and we're
Yeah.
here to actually play and to evolve and to grow and express our true selves at the highest level possible.
Mhm.
So if you're in your illusion and it's terrible and it's bad and it no longer feels like play, that's just clear evidence that you're out of alignment. And as soon as you get back into alignment, the whole world kind of kicks back into this childlike play again.
Yes.
And that's how I know if I'm following my true north or not.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious too. I mean, did different people or experiences show up after you made that decision that you were going to leave the tour and go out on your own? Because I mean, it's such a challenging thing, and I know in my own life there's constantly opportunities to kind of slip
Oh
back.
yeah.
So I'm curious how you set your life up to continue on that path and have the courage to take it.
Yeah, I mean that is a very interesting point. So as soon as I quit working with her, I set up a studio in LA, and my goal was to just become a better producer.
Uh-huh.
Because I'd been writing and producing for a long time, but I wasn't on par, with what you hear on the radio and stuff like that. So that was what I thought I was pursuing, but what ended up happening was the dark night of the soul and the
Yeah.
spiritual evolution that took place during that time. So I have another video here on my channel where I actually interview my father. The month that I quit working with Ree was the same period of time that my dad came out of the closet as gay. And this completely revolutionized every part of my being.
Right.
And my parents getting divorced, and my dad was a pastor, and so the backlash of the Christian and church community and all of these emotions just started piling up on top of one another. And eventually I found yoga. I went to therapy first, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Find a
Yeah.
therapist, everybody, because it's the
Yes,
best
they're
thing you could
great.
ever do.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and through the help of my therapist, I started reading these amazing books that were kind of
Oh.
focusing my mind on meditation.
Mhm.
Eventually, um, found yoga, and that practice just gave me this deep sense of release and peace in my being that I was so desperately craving at that time. And then
Mhm.
that led into learning how to meditate more and building that as part of my practice. And
Yes.
then eventually went through yoga teacher training and realized, much like your story, I have this deep passion to teach and to
Right.
share my inner learnings with people. And this is why I've started this YouTube channel, is
Uh-huh.
that's a direct outlet for me to do this. Um, but the truth is, everything I've just told you didn't involve music, you know?
Right.
Like
Right.
music actually, while I was doing it every day and building my skill, it kind of took this backseat focus on my journey.
Uh-huh.
And my journey was forcing me to look at all of this deep inner stuff
Yeah.
and kind of revolutionize my inner experience.
Yeah.
And so that culminated in about 2016 when I decided to actually move out of LA and move to Nashville.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the completion of that arc from quitting the Rihanna gig to now officially leaving LA and taking my life in a brand new trajectory. And
Yeah.
again, overcoming the fear, trusting the universe, I felt like my life had just gotten really stagnant in LA. And so I wanted to shift up the energy and kind of throw the spaghetti on the wall and have the universe rearrange it, you know?
Yeah,
And kind
yeah.
of simultaneously take myself out of the director's seat of my
Yes.
life, you know,
Yes.
and just, again, one of those crazy moments where it's like trust and pursue that intuition that I had at that time. And then, wouldn't you know, about it, 9 months after moving to Nashville, I get this amazing opportunity to work with this DJ named Kashmir, who now not only is it fun to do the stuff that I love to do as far as travel and play in front of thousands of people, like, of course, that's fun.
Yeah.
But the way that this gig has come into my life fascinates me because it's using all of my talents in the most unique way I've ever used them before. So
Yes.
I grew up classically trained musician, and on this gig, I'm brought in as a music director to work with a classical orchestra that performs with him live in these EDM based shows, which is my other main love, and that's what I
Yeah.
do as an artist and producer is produce EDM music. And so it's like this perfectly tailored gig just like drops into my lap, and I see that as a direct reflection of me taking these big chances
Yeah.
and trusting, you know, because I
Yeah.
didn't do anything for that gig to come my way. I just got a phone call from somebody I knew in my past, and next thing you know, I'm music director, classical orchestra with EDM, and that now
Yeah.
I'm composing with him, and it's amazing. You know, I could have never forced that to happen if I even tried.
I'm getting chills just thinking about that,
Yeah,
man. It's amazing. It's probably better than you could have ever imagined it to be, too.
honestly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now what I'm doing with this YouTube channel, and
Hmm.
I'm able to put out my spiritual self. I just feel like it took many years from quitting Rihanna back in 2011 to where I am now in 2019. I
Hmm.
honestly feel like just this summer and this fall, the puzzle pieces are finally making a pretty coherent picture.
Yes.
But for that whole time, it was all of the dirt and the shit just
Yes.
coming to the surface and
Yeah.
cleaning it out. And you think, okay, I've done it. And the next thing you know, it's like the universe is saying, no, here's another one.
Yeah. Yep.
Got to look
Yep.
at this now. And so
Yeah.
it's an intense process. And I think that's
It
why
is.
we call it the dark night of the soul.
Hmm.
Um, but encouragement for the listeners out there is that the more you can just stay present and try to ground yourself and work through these seeming obstacles,
Yes.
they're not here to destroy you. They're actually here to lift you up to that next level. So,
Yes.
so that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, it's amazing, man. Like, and I think that's such an important call out too. Is I think we have this illusion and this instant gratification culture that if I make this big decision, if I quit my job and I go start to pursue my dream, that instantly everything's going to fall into place, right?
yeah,
And there's these overnight success stories, but really when you start to dig into it, hearing your story started in 2011, and all these different things that had to happen, and these different spiritual practices that you had to have the opportunity to work through. It's such a much more authentic story, and it's so much closer to the truth of how this stuff actually works. And
mm,
I resonate with that so much. I mean, for whatever cycle it was, whether it was getting out of the wheelchair and then going to play sports, it wasn't like one day I was healed and then I was able to do that the next day. There was an arduous journey between
for
that, and
sure.
even getting the courage to quit my job and step into the space that I'm in now, or even in the space now. It's not like it's all sunshine and rainbows every moment of every day.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's constant
Yeah,
work, you know? And that's another
yeah,
thing that I've had to make peace with in my journey is that as long as I'm here in this body, it's going to continuously be work. And I
totally.
think, the moment I'm not in this body will be my graduation. And then
Yes,
I'll be on to the next level of consciousness. But as long as we're
yes,
here, we always have work to do. And so you can't get
yes,
emotionally bogged down when you're presented with the next thing to work on. You know, you
totally.
have to kind of accept it and take it in.
Yeah. Yeah, something I found that has really helped with that in my own life is to help me stay present and available for whatever spiritual practice this moment is presenting, is, just continually asking myself that question of, how can I be present and available in this moment right now? Or how can I see this as an opportunity to continue my moment right now? And not expecting yourself to answer the question, but just asking that question constantly through these challenging times, it's a bit of a paradigm shift and helps you take the fork of positivity versus
Oh
self-destruction
yeah.
when these moments inevitably come.
For sure, man. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should start wrapping it up, but I
Yeah.
wanted to give you one more chance and one more platform to kind of, if you could synthesize your message to, especially the people you talk to one on one,
Yes.
maybe give some advice to the audience out there as far as what's kind of your bullet points to go from victim mentality and you're in a shitty situation to being
Yes.
empowered and now you're on this new path of co-creation. If you
Yes.
could, in just like a short amount of time, how would
Yeah.
you help somebody there?
Yeah, what I would definitely recommend to anybody who's going through a challenging time or had a challenging circumstance take place in their life, step one is to claim it. I mean, claim it as your personal ground zero or whatever word resonates with you, but claim that as an inflection point in your life and claim it as a moment that is going to set your life on a completely different trajectory. And then once you've claimed it, find some calm, however you need to do it to cultivate that calm internally, whether it's going on a hike out in nature, listening to music, or spending time with loved ones, like whatever you need to do to get back to your personal center.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've gotten back to that personal center, ask yourself the question of what's my intention? What do I want to create? Maybe you lost your job and your personal ground zero was that, and then you work through the panic and you get to your calm, and then you ask yourself of what's my intention for what I want to create moving forward. And try your best to ignore the rational mind or the pressure of that's not possible. Try to stay grounded in that calm.
Mm,
I know we don't have too much time to go through meditation type stuff, but there's tons of resources
for
available
sure.
to help you meditate and continue to cultivate that calm. And
Just a
then once
little
you have that,
shameless plug. I actually have a 20-day
yes,
meditation course that I've
that's
released,
perfect. Yeah.
and I also have
Yes.
Meditation Mondays was a series I did for an entire year. So there's
I
about
love
50
that.
meditations on my YouTube channel that everybody can find.
Yes, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to do those
Yeah.
now too. So do the meditation like that because it's so helpful to keep you in that place of internal calm. And then once you set that intention moving forward, just ask yourself, how do I need to organize my personal ecosystem to move me towards that result? Who are the types of people that I need to spend time around to keep my frequency and vibration up? Where are the types of places I need to spend my time? What are the types of things that I need to spend my time doing? And start to build just a plan around that. And then as you move forward with the plan, this is the most important thing, bar none, continually check in with yourself. Take
Mm.
time to reflect and adjust. Don't think you need to make these massive shifts all the time. Just take time to reflect and make little shifts and see what's working and what's not, and take time to trust that the intention you set forth during that time of internal calm is the right intention for you.
Wow. Yeah. And it's going to be so unique to every
Yeah,
individual.
yeah,
And
that.
I think that that's beautiful. We all have our own individual mission here.
Mm,
And I feel if we do have all of those barriers to being our true self,
yeah,
then the universe is now lacking our shine, our sparkle.
yes, yeah,
And so I don't mean to have any ounce of guilt in what I'm about to say, but it's like we owe it to the universe to be our
absolutely.
true self.
Yes.
Because the picture's not complete until you're there.
No, I agree 1000%. I mean, when you think about making the world a better place, I think I fully believe wholeheartedly that the way to do that is having more and more people spend time as they are, not what they've been told they should be. And
Yes,
that's going to raise the collective faster than, any single person could.
100%. Totally agree, man. All right, well, let's let people know how they can find you. You have a YouTube channel now.
Yep, have a YouTube channel now, and that's at Jake Pereira. And then through my website, jakepereira.com, is where I take in a lot of clients and do booking. So if that's something you're interested, would love the chance to just have a conversation with you and see where you're at. No pressure.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
put out a lot of content too on YouTube.
That's great, man. And you're obviously on Instagram and all that stuff too. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, on Instagram at Jake Pereira, and yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel today and
Yeah,
for
thank you.
gifting my audience with your wisdom.
Oh man, the gifts all from you, man. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and meet you, and your perspective has been an inspiration in my life, and a ton of people in my circle. I've shared your story with them.
That's awesome to hear. That's super cool. Well, let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Follow Jake, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and feel free to share it with people as far as if it's touched you or moved you. The only way that we grow all of our socials is with your help, and if you share it and let people know that we're here doing this and having these elevated conversations, it helps all of us. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
Support OnenO on patreon.com and gain access to exclusive content.